Okay, today we're gonna make your pillow form for your pillowcase that you just finished making. The first thing you're going to need is your 2 pieces of 14-inch square muslin that were given to you in your kit. You're gonna make sure that you've lined all of the edges of your muslin up for both of these pieces together. And what we're gonna do is we're going to sew around all 4 sides, but we are going to leave open about a 4 to 5 inch gap in the middle of one of the sides. I prefer to do it in the middle rather than a corner. It'll be much easier to sew the opening closed later. So again, we're gonna leave about a 4 to 5 inch opening in the middle of one of the sides. We again are using our shortest straight stitch. So again, if you're on my machines for school, you are using either a 2 or a 6 setting. And we are going to be doing a 1/4 inch seam, so keeping the edge of your fabric even with the edge of your presser foot. I'm gonna start again kind of well into this side of the fabric because I want to leave that gap in the middle. So start about, this is probably about 5 inches from one side that I'm going to start at. When I get about a 1/4 of an inch from the edge, I'm going to pivot. And again, that means to keep your needle inside in your fabric, or if it's not there, you'll use your hand wheel to turn it into the fabric. You'll pick your presser foot up, lift her up, and you will rotate this. Putting that down, again, 1/4 inch, and we're gonna sew all the way down the edge of this side. And we're gonna make sure our needle's in. We're going to pivot again and sewing all the way down our next side. Pivoting again. This will be our 3rd full side. Okay, pivoting one more time. Now on this side, remember we had already started about 4 or 5 inches from the edge, and we want to keep that gap there. So about a 4 to 5 inch gap in the middle. So I'm only going to sew down a little bit, and then I'm going to stop and reverse. Okay, I'm going to stop, reverse a few, sew forward a few, and I'm finished with that. So again, now that I have that done, I do have the gap in the middle that is not sewn, that it leaves an opening. What we want to do at this point is we want to basically turn this like a sock right side out. So we're just going to turn that so we don't have any rough edges showing. We want to poke our corners out. So at this point, I have poked all 4 corners out and I have my pillow form. Again, the opening in the middle here, which we will close by hand once we stuff our pillow. All right, now we're going to fill our pillow form with cotton. This is a cluster fill cotton, but you can use any type of cotton batting that you have. So we are going to just stuff that Something you need to be cautious of whenever you're doing this is to make sure that you get your corners filled. So you want to push this very tightly into the corners because you want to make sure you have a very pointed corner. So stuffing that in, you can always use the back of a pencil, like where on the eraser side if you need to kind of stuff that into the corners to make sure that they are filled. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fill this entirely. Taking little bits at a time. If you have to fluff, you might be able to fluff that a little bit to make, if it's very compacted. And we're just going to go ahead and fill our entire pillow. Okay, I have now filled my pillow completely. My corners are nice and filled, and so that's something that you will be graded on, making sure that we want it firm, but we don't want it so firm that it's hard. So you want it to have a little bit of give to it, so it's comfortable to lay on. But we do want to make sure that our corners are filled and there's no big gaps, making sure you can kind of feel on the surface if there's a big indentation somewhere, a big hole, that you fill that in. Okay, at this time I'm going to go ahead and sew my opening closed. What I suggest doing is to take your edges of your opening and you kind of pull it closed, just kind of snug it. Make sure there are no raw edges showing, so if the raw edges are sticking out, we want to kind of turn them in. And then I like to just take a couple of pins and secure this to make sure it kind of stays that way. So I'll just put a few pins in. So I've got my opening kind of pin closed now, and again, remember there are no raw edges showing. We're going to go ahead and get ready to sew our opening closed, and in order to do that, I'm going to take my spool of thread. A lot of students like to sew off the spool, and that's not the proper way. So what you need to do is take about 18 inches of length of thread. So I'm just going to kind of guesstimate that and cut it loose. Okay. And then you're going to need a hand needle. Okay, so I've got my my small hand needle. It's got an eye in it, so it's got a little opening in it, and then you've got your thread. You're going to thread your needle. Something students like to do as well is they like to tie their thread onto the needle, and that's not right either. What I like to teach students to do is, now that my needle is on my thread, I'm going to actually bring my two ends of my thread together. So I've got my two ends, and again, I got my needle here, okay, two ends here. So I'm going to take my two ends and I'm actually just going to kind of put them together and tie a knot in the end. Okay, so I just twist to put a knot in. Before I actually pull that tight, I want my knot to be a little bit bigger so it stays in my fabric. I'm going to actually just kind of loop this a couple times so that my knot is a little thicker. Now, some grandmas have an amazing way of just taking their fingers and licking them and twisting a knot into that. Apparently, I haven't reached that age yet to be able to do that. I am not quite that talented. Maybe one of these days I will figure that out. So this is really hard to see, but there is a little knot at the bottom of my thread now. And my needle is in the opposite side.